Talking About. I'm John Griffith.
I'm Cara Kilduff.
How you doing?
I'm really good.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's first show of the year. We're running a little late because of some issues that I had.
Life stuff.
Yeah, life stuff.
It's okay.
It kind of sucks.
But we're here now.
We're here now with somebody who knows a lot about life stuff.
Oh my goodness, what a great segue. We have Jacqueline Simon Gunn, author. Wait, are you a psychotherapist? Psychologist. Okay. But we call her Jackie.
Yes, we do.
But she has a new book.
Forever in One Day.
It's a love story. I started this book and I could not put it down, so. Yeah, it's a little dark in here.
It is what it is. We make the best with what we got.
That's true. All right, welcome.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, always happy to have you. I would ask what you've been up to, but it's rather obvious by why you're here.
All right, brief synopsis.
Yeah.
Of the book. So it's a second chance love story. The protagonist's name is Olivia, and it is, like all my other books, very complicated because my brain does not like simple plot lines. So it goes
that makes it more fun for the reader, just so you know.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I've read books that, this is almost 500 pages. But so Olivia is the protagonist, and she's 38 years old. 17 years before, she was with a young man, her boyfriend from high school, and their senior in college, they got engaged, and her life was on one path until she caught him in bed with her best friend, and then she never saw him again. He tried to reach out to her. He showed up at a college dorm. They spoke once, but she wouldn't speak to him, and she turned her back on that part of her life. So the first, I'd say, 140 pages goes back and forth in time because instead of telling the backstory, I wanted the readers to actually experience the backstory. So you have her and Justin as kids, when they first get together, the first time they've had sex, the night they get engaged, a few more scenes, and then when she catches him, and then that stops. Running alternate chapters to that is Olivia getting an invitation for a 20-year high school reunion and deciding to finally go back and revisit this thing that is lodged in her brain that she's pushed aside and pushed forward, but has this lingering presence in her life. At the same time that she's contemplating what it's going to be like to go to the reunion and thinking about Justin, she meets a new man named Adam, who's 10 years, he's 47, so she's 38, so he's about 9 years older, and he's a best-selling author, and they both live in Manhattan. Justin still lives in New Jersey, where they're from, and she had found out through Facebook friends, because they all went to high school together, that he actually married the girl he betrayed her with. And then at about, 160, 170 pages is the scene at the reunion when they meet again, and that connection's still there, but he's married to the best friend and she's with the other guy. And then it
opens up.
And then there's a bunch of other stuff that thankfully no one who has reviewed the book, there's something that happens in the story that a lot of people, I cried writing it, and other people I know that had contacted me said I was crying through this part, and no one has given that away, so I'm not going to say that. Don't. So they meet at the reunion, and there's this chemistry there, but obviously there's a lot of complication. You don't know as the reader, because in the beginning part of the book, you only have Olivia's point of view. It's not until after the reunion then you get Justin's point of view. So I wait until about 175,
about a third of the way through the book, almost halfway.
Right. Yeah. It's 470 pages, so then you have another 200 pages.
Okay.
Going back and forth between all four of the characters. Olivia and Justin get most of the voice time, but you get from Petal, and you get from Adam, as the four kind of are all affected by this initial betrayal that created this wedge.
Okay, and you're talking page numbers, and I just want to reassure the viewers that it's a riveting read, and it's like sometimes you hear
No, it's
how
a
many
really
pages, but
fast
it's
read.
Yeah.
It's a fast, easy read, and actually, I think the font on this book is larger than my other books because I chose a different font. So I think it's a fast. I mean, people had read it in 3 or 4
Yeah, but all
days.
your other books were like that too. They were all fast
Yeah.
reads because you just get sucked
you
in.
get sucked in. It's like so you're looking at the page, and in my mind, the window into the words. I stop seeing the words, and I start playing the movie in my brain,
Right.
and then it just goes from there, and it opens up like that really quickly, and just that's
So
my
this is
process.
different because the last thing you had when you saw us last, you had the thrillers, right?
Right, so the thriller is a 5-book series, the 3 big books, and then 2 spin-off novellas, which one from each of the male murder victims. So that's a 5-book series, and this is my first romance. But it's not. It's like there's a lot of It's not psychological like the thriller series, but there are a lot of dialogue that is a little bit philosophical because the characters, Olivia's a psychologist, she's not a clinician, she's a professor of psychology at Hunter College. The boyfriend Adam is a romance novelist and he writes books with like existential themes, and Justin is a musician and a songwriter. So all of them are thinkers, and I did that because I'm a thinker, and so that like people are always looking for the author in fiction, right? It's like, who is that? You here?
I was wondering that.
No, but this book is like total fantasy. It's there's nothing in it that is me and the character. I mean, I always see some of myself in the characters, but I mean, Olivia has a lot of strengths that I wish I had, so it was like kind of rewriting my own story in a way.
Okay.
But the dialogue is, you know, like when my dad read, he said I could see a lot of you in it, but he didn't mean the characters. He meant the way that the characters think and the conversations they have. So unlike other romance novels that are exclusively focused on like a hot guy and a sassy female, and will they get together or won't they get together? No, but that really is like, you know, this is a more complicated story. I'm bringing up like very complex questions about what Justin did and if she will forgive him, and what is redemption, when does someone redeem themselves, and about love.
Well, I think that, and the other thing too, like when I started to read it and talking about like a 20th high school reunion, you know, you can't help but think back to like your own 20th, you know, like people that you know, in your past that you pined for or whatever. I think that's kind of universal, that I think anybody could pick that book up and get into it, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, my 20th reunion, I don't remember thinking anything like that about anyone I went to school with, because I was just like, wow, no mercy.
Well, I think one of the mistakes she made, Olivia, is that she really never asked it for, I think she was just so hurt, and she's kind of a runner, and so she like flees from a difficult situation and she just keeps pushing ahead and she never looks back, and that's always a mistake. She could have been my patient, right? So I mean, like she needed to go back and work it through, but she doesn't. Like it's like so painful, she can't more. And even there's later in the chapters conversations between her and her mother, where her mother kind of discusses with her these like flaws, these, you know, your pride has gotten in the way, this has gotten in the way, this is what love is really about, look at what you're doing, kind of things. And there's reason for that conversation. And so it brings up question. I think that was her mistake. So I mean, I think that the what if for Olivia, it was always maybe there because she never really allowed herself to contemplate until Justin was right in her face, and that bond was still there.
Well, that's another thing that I get, that was frustrating too, because when I find characters like that in books, I'm just like, oh my God, go to therapy. It's not that difficult. You know, I get like upset with them, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, I know it's part of their journey, whatever, but I'm like, this is so easy. Just go talk to somebody a couple times a week or once a week. It's not a big deal. You'll be fine.
Well, I tried to I mean, so far the reviews have come in have been really interesting, and I really enjoy getting reviews. I mean, I don't enjoy getting bad reviews, but if they're well, I mean, you never want someone not to like a book when you just love the characters and you spend so much time with them. But if they're being honest, they're being honest, and bad reviews can provide feedback if they're well written, so that you understand what the reader expected and what they didn't get. And thankfully, I haven't got any bad ones yet, but I mean, inevitably, knock on wood. I mean, but the one thing that I think has been really consistent is that I think the way that I wrote the story, even though a few people had trouble with the betrayal, I think because I'm a psychologist, I'm trained to empathize with people no matter what. Like, I've sat in rooms with murderers, and I had to find a way to relate to them and hear their story. Not psychopathic murderers, someone that like killed someone.
I like that you just qualified that.
No, I mean, but it's like psychopath, there's like no redeeming qualities. But there are people who commit murder, and there are reasons. And I mean, normal outside of the profession, I would never want to hear their story, nor would I ever empathize it. But when someone is your patient, you have to find a way to understand it from their perspective so that they feel you're listening and understanding. And I think that that is what maybe is the strength of the book. I mean, even Petal, who sleeps with her best friend's fiance, you know, people have understood why she did it, because that's what I do at work. If she came in and talked to me and I was like, I can't believe you did that, I would have to like catch myself and be like, all right, what happened? Like, who is she? What motivated that? And how can I find a way to like be with her in that? And that's the thing, that's how people are. Everything has a reason, and the reason always makes sense to the person.
Right.
And and I feel like, okay, people definitely, there were a few people that were upset with what Justin did, and I understood that. But the way that I wrote it, I think people were at least able to understand how it happened and why he did it, and maybe he wasn't this evil person people thought in the beginning of the book, you know.
Okay.
I know. I don't write easy stories. I know, it's like, just write an easy story.
No, don't.
Yeah. But just in developing your characters as opposed to in your day-to-day professional life as a psychologist, I would think that as a psychologist, when you're with clients, you're peeling away the layers to get to the heart of who they are, and the writing, I assume, is the opposite of that. You're starting with the heart of who they are, and then you're building the layers up. Am I correct in that? Or
no, I think so. I don't use my writing process is nuts. I don't use an outline. I have an idea. Like, so this book started, I wanted to write, I liked the idea. I wanted to explore the betrayal. So I knew that she was going to be betrayed by the best friend, and I knew there was going to be a 20-year reunion. That is all I knew when it started. And actually, when I started the book, it was really difficult writing Olivia's chapters because I was still in the head of the protagonist from the thriller series, Katie, and I kept hearing Katie's voice, and they're very different. And it took me like a long time to like figure out who she was. So in a way, I think it is a little bit similar. I see her behavior on the surface, and then the more that I feel the character, it feels like the character takes over. So she does this or Justin does this, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why he did that. Oh, I see. Okay. And then it builds. That being said, for me, I mean, all writers do this, but I think for a non-outliner, it's more, the rewrites are like long and tedious. So when the book is all done, then I have to go back and fix everything that's not consistent when I started it. So, I mean, if I thought she was this way in the beginning and she felt this way in the beginning, as the character evolves, who she is at the end doesn't make sense with who she was in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I have to go back and fix that. So, like with this book, this was the hardest book I've written so far. And part of it's because the characters are the most normal of any book I've ever written. No, I know my aunt said, well, I would think that the thriller series would be much harder with all the suspense. And I said, no, for some reason, like writing crazy is easier. These were normal everyday problems. I mean, it's an awful situation, but it's could happen to anyone. You know,
Right.
people aren't usually stalked by murderers, thankfully. You know what I mean? So
If they're lucky.
if they're lucky, you know, unless you're in a Dateline episode kind of thing, or Wives with Knives or
Oh,
something like
God.
that. But I so when I sent the book to Carlo for editing, I really liked the book, and he was like, oh my gosh, there were a lot of problems that I couldn't see with the book, especially with Justin's character. And he was integral in the process. I mean, I'm so grateful. Reviewers have said it's like really well written, and I give him credit for that, because he ripped that but it was like 100 pages longer than it is now. He like gave me suggestions of where to pull narrative out. No, yeah, he's very good at like chopping. He loves that.
The first time you were here, he was on with you, and we.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, so far, I mean, if he ever gets too busy, I'll be disappointed. But he's edited all my stuff, and I really trust him, and I feel like he can make suggestions that keep the integrity of my own work, because he knows me too. So it's like a really good relationship. But you know, I think he had trouble with Justin in the first draft, and he didn't like the ending. He was not happy there, but he made me laugh. He has these little bubbles, and he's got this really like sarcastic sense of humor. He's like, no, you know what I mean? No, so it got better, but it took a long time. The rewrites took, I think, longer than writing the book.
Oh my God. So how long did this take?
I was writing at this time last year. I'm gonna say like over a year and 3 months, maybe a year and 2 months.
Okay.
But I mean, like
Heavy duty.
yeah, like I was writing like hours and hours. I was so involved in this book. Yeah, I was like depressed when it was over. It was like I couldn't wait to get it done, because it was so stressful trying to pull the whole thing together, and like, but at the same time, it was like I just really got attached to the story. And I think also going from like the dark thrillers to something that was so filled with love, it just made me feel so good and hopeful.
You
And
probably had to do that
life was
after.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, then the funny part is so the park, there's like an intimate. It's less erotic than the thriller series. There are sex scenes, but they're more romantic sex than like rough, passionate sex. So, but there's a romantic sex scene in the park. So the characters I mentioned are from the town I grew up in, and there's a scene in the park and in the town I grew up in. My dad still lives there, and I was running in the park one day when I was visiting him, and it's like, oh God, I mean, it felt so vivid, like they were around the corner, like Justin was going to come out and find me, like
Yeah.
all the spots they were. I mean, it's like you could feel like you could lose your mind.
My writing process is nuts. I love
No,
that.
it is though. It really is. I mean, I think some writers are more methodical. But I don't. I feel like it affects my creative process. Like if I'm halfway through a book and ideas come to me, then I'll start taking notes on the side. I'll be like, okay, Justin's going to do this, but the story unfolds as I'm going. Like I just started a new book, and it was the same thing. It's like it's nebulous, but I have an idea, and it's, you know, right as it's going, and I'm like, oh, right. Like, so it kind of shapes itself. That's just.
What's the new one about?
Well, no, so I finished one, and I'm doing rewrites on another love story, but this one, it takes place on South Beach in Miami.
Okay.
I lived there for 3 years. Very salacious. And this one is not like this. Yeah. This is an erotic. This is much more erotic, but another love triangle. I love them.
Very salacious.
Yeah, very salacious. Well, South Beach. I mean,
Yeah.
and so
Hard
Alex,
bodies and hard lives.
there's some scene Carlo hasn't seen it yet. I feel like when I lived in South Beach, I lived with Carlo. We were together. I feel like he's telling me tone it down. I feel like he's gonna say this one's too mild, because South Beach is nuts. You know, it's like really wild. So, but the main character is Alex, and she's in a graduate school program in psychology, and she falls in love with Will, someone she's in school with. And Will has like a complex backstory, and he's very guarded. So he starts to drive her nuts because he pulls her in and then pushes her away. But they have this extremely passionate relationship. And then through a chain of events, it winds up being like another love square triangle
Okay.
thing. But it's not, this is a much more, I mean, there's a lot of existential themes in it. There's like a lot of places to think about life. This other story is more, I think it's not as sweet. This isn't like a sweet romance. There's a
Right.
genre for sweet romance, but it is this one. Maybe it's not even erotic fiction. I think it's like it's almost like women's fiction.
Okay.
And then there's a romance in it, because the story is really about how we meet people and we break against them. And sometimes it's not good at the time, but there are reasons why that happens. It's almost like we're a bunch of walls as we go through development. The character's only 30. So she's evolving and becoming, and she's like still reeling from a bad breakup. And it's a lot about her process. So she meets this other guy who like repeats this awful pattern she has with her ex, but there's something about trying to break him down that breaks her down, which is very passionate and very crazy, but it's part of a growth process. And so all of the characters are breaking and falling apart, and at the end everyone comes back together, but maybe not in the way that a traditional romance would end, kind of thing. So we'll see. So that'll be the next book, and I think it's going to be called Where You'll Land. So
Okay.
People watching this are probably going to think that graduate students in psychology are hot.
well, no, I have a beta reader that's a romance novelist, and she's awesome. She read Forever in One Day. She loved it. She is the only person who has read the new book. She did not read the thriller series though, and she said, "Oh my gosh, this book is nuts." And she said that, but she said that she really, really enjoyed the way that the exposure of what it's really like to be in a clinical psych program, the conversations between the characters, and how they can talk about psychological dysfunction, but they're displaying it in themselves. So I don't know. It's like one of those things where it's like, okay, like if your books ever really get out here, you're going to be eaten alive for this one. But I mean, I mean, because people don't like the truth sometimes, but this is what it's like. I mean, we all analyze each other, and it's kind of an interesting thing going to graduate school in psychology, being around a bunch of people who are analyzing each other before you have patience, before you mature enough professionally to realize you can't really analyze someone you don't know. We do it to each other, which makes it kind of,
That's nuts.
well, that's what you'll read in the next book.
Okay.
God, I didn't know that. That's weird.
Well, that's what she like. I'm going to see what Carla says in the book. So she had that beta reading, and then the book I'm working on now is going to be, people have already asked for a sequel of Forever One Day, which I cannot write, even though I'm dying to, because the way the story ends, if I write a direct sequel, it's going to look like a manufactured drama, and it's not going to be good. But what I'm going to do is, Justin is a musician, and his band is called Furious Whiskers, and I think I'm going to it's going to be like the Furious Whiskers series. So it's going to be another love story between another band member. So you'll see some of the characters from Forever and One Day, but it's a whole nother story.
Shared universe.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. If I can
Okay. I like stuff like that.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I might just make a career out of that. These two books, the Furious Whiskers and this book, definitely that's going to be a series. And that can actually, I think, be like a more linear series. If I can pull it off, who knows? I mean, I could always write another thriller. Let's see.
But wherever your creative energy takes you is where you should go. And obviously occasionally, pushing your own boundaries, which I see you're not afraid to do.
Well, right. I'm not afraid to do when I'm home. When the book comes out, it's always nerve-wracking.
I'm
Of course.
Very nerve-wracking. But
so there's a whole lot going on. And, where can people find out more?
So, I mean, I'm like all over social media. I have a Facebook page. I have a Twitter account, but I'm not on Twitter that much. But I'm also on Instagram now. So if people are interested, like in my writing in general, my Instagram page is really just my writing. I post things from my books I'm working on, previous books, but also like random pieces. I'm not really a poet, but if every once in a while I wake up with one in my head, so I just put it on Instagram. Then the books are on Amazon. The books are on Amazon and or Barnes and Noble website.
Okay,
So,
at your online or physical retailer, and you can just
yeah,
ask for it, and they can get it for you if it's not. Just ask for it, and they'll get it for you.
yeah. But I mean, the best place to get it really is just like everyone else does. Just go on Amazon, and you could just put in Forever in One Day or my name, and the book will come right out.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's the perfect way to do it. I'm a brick and mortar person. That's just me.
I mean, I still love going to Barnes and Noble and buying a book.
It smells good in
I know
there.
it's just, and my husband keeps saying, "Oh, we were in an independent bookstore yesterday, and he was like, it's only a matter of time, and you just want to shake them." No, he said they're like he said they're like vinyls. He just likes teasing me because I have 3 huge bookshelves of books, and it's the bane of his existence. He wants me to get rid of them. They take up all these room. No, they're not going anywhere. He likes to tease me. So I think he just likes to tease me because he knows that I love books. But there's just nothing like being in a bookstore. I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going in and like just looking at the spines, and then you can pick it up and look at it instead of scrolling through the Kindle library. Like,
Yeah,
I mean the immediate gratification though, like when it's snowing out and you want a book.
Sure.
It's nice.
Yeah,
that is kind of nice, but I like to have, because I like to write in my books.
I know, me too.
Like,
You know?
I love that. I'm gonna make my husband watch this video because I read with a pen. And
Yeah.
he said he's never seen this before.
Oh, what's his name?
Can you tell him, Joe?
Joe, lots of people read books with pens in their hands.
yes, it's a normal thing to do.
It is normal. You're not.
I highlight dog ears, paper clips,
Yeah.
everything. Oh yeah.
Well, because if it makes total sense if you come across a concept that the authors,
Or you want
Well,
to
I
come back
like
to it,
quotes too, so I like to go back. And honestly, I have books from years ago, from graduate school, that have dog ears and paper clips and all of that. And I've been writing like I do freelance writing, and that's nonfiction. And occasionally I've gone in and I'm like, oh, it's in that book, to reference something, and I can find it because it's dog eared, paper clipped, and either highlighted or written in. So it's not like I don't. It's not just for fun. It's useful too.
yeah, you never know where you're gonna find inspiration. I personally write things down on napkins and
anywhere.
scraps of paper. And
Yeah.
then,
And then I keep them in my pocket, and I wash them, and it never comes back. But
no.
yeah, but the book is this book is Forever in One Day, and it's a nice breezy read and with a great story at your online or physical retailer. And do you have a direct web page that people can go to?
jsgunn.com.
jsgun.com, and you can find out information about that at www.talkingabout.info or on our YouTube page. You can see this video and many more like it. Thank you so much for taking the time
Oh,
to
thank
come
you
and
for
visit us,
having
and-
me.
and
Thank you.
every time you've got something to talk about, you're welcome here.
Thank you.
Well,
I have to
yeah,
write
you-
faster
you're
so I can see
cranking out the books.
Yeah, really.